The mic is muted. Is that right or wrong? It's unmuted now. Well, my apologies here. Seems like every day is a challenge, and there's always something new and something to struggle about. But I just want to say good afternoon, freedom fighters and Alberta patriots. It's exciting to be here again, but yet it can be discouraging. I've put together a letter today that, again, people can go to my website or the wildrose.party website and sign it to send it to the Premier. This lockdown, this detention center in Calgary for international flights coming in is a big concern and something that is upsetting to many people. And, you know, people talk all the time about the fear and the greed in the market and how driven greed can be. And again, we saw that with GameStop, the way they're able to run that up in the market. And the little guy was able to really turn the tables onto the big investors and the hedge fund investors. And they're all frustrated that they can't believe this has happened to them. Yet for years, they've enjoyed manipulating the market. But what always trumps greed is fear. And when the fear is all of a sudden brought into the market, it's amazing how fast the market crashes compared to how fast it can go up with greed. And a friend of mine, Todd, pointed out again so well the other day is that, well, you know what trumps fear, and that's anger. And again, if you see a mother who is trying to protect her child and is fearful, but all of a sudden when something happens and she turns to anger, they attack without thought. And good friend Nadine Wellwood put out a video yesterday or the day before because of the anger that's swelled up inside of her at what our Premier is allowing the federal government to do to Albertans as they're arriving back home and supposedly don't have the proper paperwork in place. And again, upset. But what was most interesting to me is that yesterday I had to go to the dentist, and I don't like going to the dentist. I don't know anybody who does like going to the dentist. But it's amazing to me how different it is now compared to when I was a little child and you got your first cavities filled and to go through that traumatizing experience. And anyways, I had a filling that was cracking and needed to be replaced. And getting old and outlived my filling, but go in there and they start off by putting a Q-tip in with some numbing agent, and then they give you a needle. And what amazes me the most is you don't feel anything anymore. There's just, it's numb, didn't feel a single thing. But I have to confess, well, it's just true. When he started up the drill, my heart started pounding. I've had it a few times in the last few years. Know that you can't feel anything. I actually had a root canal done, and I was just amazed. My dentist is amazing. Such steady hands. He never slips. You just don't feel anything. But that didn't help. And I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, trying to think that, why is my heart pounding? I'm okay. Nothing's going to happen. But yet it races. And it's very hard. And we always talk about if only you could walk in another person's shoes for a mile, or to live his life for a day, or to have to endure the pain that individual's enduring. And sympathy and empathy are interesting concepts to the human mind, to me, and how we can sympathize with somebody or we can actually empathize with somebody. I appreciate that our Premier's in a tough situation, but I can't empathize. I've not been in that haven't been easy for me to say or you to say. I haven't been in that situation, but I certainly sympathize with the tough choices he has to make. But to me, it goes back to being principled and what do we do and how do we help people. The agenda of the socialist left, the socialist, the globalist, is, in my opinion, is to undermine our self-confidence, our hope, our belief that we can be successful. They want us to say that we can't be in this world. And once that fear sets in, how do you replace it? What are we going to replace it with? It's got to be hope. It's got to be inspiring. It's got to be good. But David, could we put up the FDR quote after World War II, and we're struggling. FDR put this out and has been quoted by many people over the years, but the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And it's true. It's a tough situation. But in last August, a good friend of mine, Melissa, sent me a quote from C.S. Lewis that to me is very inspiring. And again, this is from August 31st. She pinned it on her Facebook page, and I think many people have seen it, but I'm going to take the time to read it because I think it's worth it. But instead of using the word atomic bomb, I'm going to put in COVID. But this is her letter that she wrote. I love this quote of C.S. Lewis, particularly in the third paragraph, said in 1948 about the mental shift required by living under the threat of the atomic bomb. I haven't quite made up my mind where I stand on the COVID-19 issue and the action taken by the world leaders in response, but I believe I'm going to land somewhere like this. Quote, we think a great deal too much about the atomic bomb slash COVID, how we are going to live in a atomic age slash COVID age. I am tempted to reply, why, as you would live in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year, or how you lived in the Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed as are already living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway accidents, and an age of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty or the newness of our situation. And again, this is 1948, but yet the same words, the novelty, the novel virus. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb, COVID, was invented or arrived. And quite a high percentage of us were going to die an unpleasant way. We had indeed a very great advantage over our ancestors, anesthetics, but we still have that. It is perfectly ridiculous, to go out whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. This is the first point to be made. And the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we're all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, COVID, let that bomb, COVID, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts, not huddled like a frightened sheep and thinking about bombs, COVID, that may break our bodies. And then he puts in brackets here, a microbe can do that, but the need to not dominate our minds. On Living in the Atomic Age, 1948, C.S. Lewis. And I just find that quite fascinating that he says a microbe can do that. And that's the fear that we are now faced with. And I want to see bombarded daily in the news about this. But it was upsetting to me yesterday when the premiers come out and got new rules now because of the new variant that's out there. But they continue day after day to put out this sense of despair, the sense of hopelessness, the sense that our healthcare system can't perform and keep up to the pressures of the flu, the COVID, and the only way to go forward is to huddle in our homes and to put our lives on hold, to have the bills and stuff rack up, but we just, for the fear of going forward, we can't go out. And I understand fear. Um, I don't have a lot of fears in life, and some people say I'm a little bit bold, a little bit reckless in the things that I've wanted to do. Getting back into politics, I didn't have any fear in doing it, but I don't have any desire to do it. And yet, those that I have tried to reach out, and we're sending letters to ask the MLAs to stand up for our freedoms, for our rights, all of them at this point are caught in this fear of, oh my goodness, if I do this, I might lose my job. I might be kicked out of caucus. They're living in this moment of fear, and like deer in the headlights, they're not able, in my opinion, to think straight, or they're thinking selfishly and only about their own future, and fail to represent those of us who elected them. And as I've gone on and on, we don't have the ability to fire them. We were promised recall. We were promised that they'd be accountable to us, but they're not, and they're still not. And Premier Kenny, you need to pass recall legislation. But anyways, this fear is a problem, and it's a real problem for those people that are struggling and have it wrapped around their heads. I've written earlier that if the government and those people who say we need to be shut down, if we were to shut down their income, shut down their life, and they had zero in, I think that they might actually change and start sympathizing with those individuals, that this is having a major impact. And I've referred to the suicides, the deaths, the other tragedies that have gone on, the people that haven't been treated, they're not receiving the treatment or the diagnosis that they need in our healthcare system. And it's becoming more and more prevalent that the damage caused by our reaction and the shutdowns is far and greatly exceeding the damage or the pain of the virus. And again, we it just it's this hamster on the wheel going round and round and round. It's the dog chasing its tail, expending a great deal of energy but accomplishing nothing. We haven't boosted up or prepared our healthcare for a surge. It's all the same. And yet we're told day in and day out we can't do that anything. But David, do you have that picture of Rachel and her quote last night in the news? Oh my goodness, that's very small. Can't read it without my glasses, but here we are. Alberta NDP says that the lack of global knowledge on this virus means that the province needs to tighten restrictions and not loosen them. What we know about this variant is that we don't know about the variant. And again, Rachel feeding to this fear and this idea that everybody needs to be shut down. And it's just not so. Those that have assessed the risk value, are healthy and have work to do, should be able to make that decision and say that I want to go to work today, or I want to go and I want to go and play sports. I want to, my kids, again, hockey, junior hockey canceled yesterday. Many parents, this is important activity for many thousands of Albertans, and yet it's been shut down, and that's going to have an impact on their physical and mental health going forward, that for some reason that those don't count. The only thing that counts day in and day out is how many COVID cases we have and how many COVID deaths we have. They won't report any others. They won't inform us about anything. And they don't even say such simple things as, there's a lot of results coming back to show the importance of taking your vitamins, especially vitamin D, taking some zinc. And if we have these people coming in, I still haven't heard whether we're treating any Albertans that have come down with COVID, whether we're using ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, which there are more and more reports coming out showing the efficacy of these and other drugs, and yet we don't hear about it. And this is a real concern to me. But I guess this idea that Rachel and Jason and the world leaders keep talking about is that this is for the benefit of society, that this is demonstrably justified, but yet we can't go in the courts to challenge them to show us that it's justified. The number of lives that you're destroying, the businesses that you're destroying, show us how you justify shutting down society. And again, for me, as we look back with 2020 hindsight, almost a year now, and again, I guess I want to go back further, and I'm going to twist in a little bit here about the Keystone XL and whatnot. This isn't, in my opinion, an attack on oil and gas here in Alberta. This isn't an attack on our agricultural industry or anything else. What this is an attack on is the freedom and the prosperity, the freedom and the wealth that Albertans enjoy, and many other areas in the world. And this fear that has been put on us on COVID to me is about destroying our ability to have faith or hope for the future. It wants to undermine our society and to create a have-not province that turns to the federal government, that turns to a global government for direction. And we just can't afford to sit back and say, well, it's going to be all right. Day in and day out, we see more and more of our freedoms being taken from us. And again, they use this excuse as for the good of society. And another good friend, Paul Mitchell, last night when we were discussing policies, there's a group of us that have been going over policies and what we need to do. He said in a very profound way, and I can't articulate it as well as he did, but the fact of the matter is that the Nuremberg trials brought forward new, well, what would I say, law that you can't put one group of people against another group, and international law says that you can't turn one tribe against another tribe, that we're all have those basic fundamental human rights. And when those who say that we can't go out and that you can't run and operate your business, and that you can't meet and join with your family, or you can't go to church, or that you can't associate with your colleagues, they're being treated different and not equally of other people. And we need to have those fundamental freedoms. And those people, the working well, those that feel that the risk is worth it and necessary, should be able to go out. And the part that bothers me the most is that these individuals, these snitches that want to turn us in and to turn us against each other, they can stay home. There's nobody saying that you have to come out. And if they have that fear, that's fine. But I watched another thing last night on the news. I PVR'd it so I could zip through it and watch a few things. But I found it fascinating that one mother, because of the new variant outbreak in our schools, when she was asked by the news, well, how do you feel okay about this? Do you feel safe? And her response, oh yes, our school requires that everybody wears a mask. And people, if masks solved and prevented a virus, the COVID virus, from passing from one person to another, it would have been eliminated months and months ago. If social distancing was the answer, it would have been eliminated months and months ago. The premier, after our holidays on January 1st, says, oh no, it's perfectly safe and fine to fly, when we know that that's the number one carrier, and how it gets spread around the world so fast is from flights. It's just amazing to me that this virus, the size of it, and the thought that a mask is what prevents it from getting around. All you need to do is see a hazmat suit, or see that those who work with viruses, what they wear, and you realize that the length and the detail that they go through to ensure that they don't get exposed to it. I'm sorry, masks do help. They reduce it, and there's an impact there, but it's inconsequential. When you look at the graphs and you superimpose those regions that have not had masks and shut down businesses versus those areas like ours, or Quebec or Ontario, and if you superimpose them one on top of the other, you see that the case numbers pretty much reflect one another. You wouldn't be able to say, oh, this is the group that wears masks and this is the group that doesn't. But to go back to the root of the problem, it's the fear mongering. It's the taking away of our confidence, our belief in ourselves, our self-reliance, our ability to care for one another and to make our own decision, that is causing so much pain. And again, into this police totalitarian state where we have neighbors tattling on neighbors and calling a snitch line or scorning people. And I'm sorry, this is wrong and it's unacceptable. And we need to stand up and speak out. And if we fail to do that, you just have to ask the question, where are we going to be in 1 month, in 6 months, in a year from now? And it's not in a good place. The fact of the matter is, governments are racking up absolute, unbelievable record deficits that we're going to have a problem. The train is going to go off the bridge, and we're going to have a wreck. And the sooner we stop this spending and this insanity of shutting down the nation and shutting down businesses, the reduction of that risk will have an impact. But the longer that we perpetuate these ideas and this fear mongering, the bigger the calamity is going to be when this wreck hits. But anyways, I guess I just want to jump over to, because the other thing that was big on the news last night was this individual that's supposedly the unofficial opposition for Putin. He survived poisoning, was in a coma in Germany, and was on parole. Well, he was brought forward and in court yesterday in Russia. And one of the questions was, well, you broke your parole. We didn't know where you were. And his answer was, well, I was in a hospital in a coma. And again, there's lots of speculation on whether the state tried to poison him and others around the world. But what's alarming again is the fear mongering, and what he said was very profound, that you will attack and punish one in order to control millions. And this is what's happening here. They attack and punish the different individuals that you've showed up, and they says your paperwork's not in order, and it scares others. And again, there's a very simple solution here, in my opinion, on people that are arriving. First of all, that we could actually be civil and say, I'm sorry, sir or ma'am, that your papers here aren't in order, and we're very concerned, and we need you to self-isolate. And if they really wanted to be draconian, I mean, they could just tell them to go home, and they do for most people. They get to go home, and they tell you to self-isolate. I received a text that another individual's friend was forced and said that, no, you've got to put the tracing app onto your phone and go home. But rather than treat us as law-abiding citizens and good citizens, we're treated as criminals. But they're not given their rights. They're not told who's arresting them or why they're arresting them, because they're not. They say, if you refuse to come with us, we will arrest you. And again, in my letter to Premier Kenney, I've asked him to stand up for Albertans. There's no reason for this to be allowed. Healthcare is a provincial issue. Premier Kenney says there's nothing that I can do about it. I categorically disagree with you, Premier Kenney. There's everything you can do about it. And first of all, you can tell Ottawa to cease and desist and to get out of our province. Healthcare is a provincial issue. And even at that, Premier Kenney, you're failing to recognize and treat the actual problems. You want blanket coverage across the whole province, when many areas there is no risk, and we should be able to carry on living and have focused protection. You can absolutely have the sheriffs, when these individuals come off federal grounds at the airport, they should be arrested for illegal capture or kidnapping of Alberta citizens, and they should be the ones that actually go to jail and being charged for interference in people's lives or this kidnapping. And Premier Kenney, you need to do that. And if you don't want to do that, then I think that you should resign and allow us to select a leader that will protect Albertans and protect Albertans from this foreign entity in Ottawa that wants to apprehend Albertans and escort them away to a five-star hotel and charge them thousands of dollars. It's unbelievable to me the deficits that we're running, that they're hiring and doing this, when they simply could say you need to go home and self-isolate, or they could provide a place to say that if you're not able to, you could go to these other hotels, and they certainly don't need to be five-star ones. But it's completely out of hand, and Premier Kenney, you've allowed it to get out of hand, and you need to stop it or resign. There's no other option, in my opinion. And I hope that one day, if you don't resign, that you'll be held accountable for this. You and the top health officials that are making these decisions. And again, what you're doing to Alberta citizens that you do not seem to have any sympathy or empathy for, those people who are struggling to make a living, is wrong, and you need to step down. But again, once again, we put together a form letter. I think the best thing that we as individuals can do is to continue to send the letters and the phone calls to the Premier and the UCP MLAs and saying what you're doing is wrong, and we're going to hold you accountable. And hopefully we can do that before the next election in March of 2023. But if not, please send the letters. And want to thank you for tuning in again today. Go to my website, paulhinman.com, or to wildrose.party. And I think that the link for this one is on the wildrose.party. And it's, there you are, wildrose.party/send a letter. And we just need to act in numbers, support those businesses that are defiant of these orders, and let's try and get Alberta back to work and to enjoying life, and for the kids to be able to play sports and enjoy life again, rather than living in this state of fear, which is, again, doing more harm than the virus itself. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and let's keep sending in the ideas or the tragedies to me to share with everybody. But again, just want to thank those of you that are helping this cause and sending the messages and supporting the Wild Rose Party. And together we will make a difference, whether that's in the next few weeks or whether it's in March of 2023. We thank you, and we'll keep you posted. But take care and God bless. Bye.